Okay, hi, this is Dr. Furl. I want to go over with you today is a lot more about brain-based care and why you would require the brain-based care. Also, what we're actually doing when you get the treatment on the table from the torque release technique and even some of the other general activation treatments like the upper and lower body ergometer, the whole body vibration, the NSI machine. They're all sending new input to the brain to change the output. So first thing I want to go over with you is some basic concept of the innate intelligence of the body, that the power that made the body can heal the body. So if you look at how a person forms, you have the egg and sperm come together, and then basically somewhere around the 19th day, the egg and sperm come together and form one cell. It divides and divides and divides. At around the 19th day, all of a sudden the first thing that we can see on the beginning of that glob of cells that's just dividing becomes what's called the neural streak. The neural streak turns into the nervous system. So the first system formed inside of you and me is this thing called the nervous system. From that day forward, the nervous system controls and coordinates all functions, all cells, everything. It runs the show. It's the internet inside of you, and it runs everything. So as the nervous system goes up or down in function, your life and your health goes up or down in function. The nervous system also is what gives you your perception of yourself and the world around you. So if the nervous system is not working well, your perception of yourself and the world around you is off. Now I just want to talk about some functional neurology here. I've combined torque release technique and functional neurology together so that when you're laying on the table there, it's a very insightful approach. There is no guessing. I tell you what I see. Yes, I want to know how you feel, but how you feel does not influence what I'm going to do on the table. I'm looking at neurological reflex tests, and based on my checks and balances, I can tell you how things are working, how things are changing. It's good, bad, or otherwise. But just to give you an idea of how the nervous system works overall. The nervous system has a tone. Again, think of good tone like Mozart, bad tone like a bad rap song. And over a time frame, as that nervous system goes up in tone or down in tone, again, everything else follows. So your tone, called your central integrated state, a lot of this information I'm going to go over with you was all the research that exploded in the 1980s explaining the nervous system. Before this, we really didn't know exactly how things were working inside the nervous system. So basically the nervous system is a receptor-based system. It means that the receptors send physical signals to the brain from your body and keep the brain activated to work properly, and then the nervous system runs the show. So input drives output. If you break the body down and you look at the nerves, 80% of the nerves in the body, from the brain to the body, 80% of the nerves there carry information from the body to the brain, and 20% carry information from the brain back to the body. So the point of that is that input is the cause, meaning activating the brain, and then the output is the effect. So your nervous system is allowing you to adapt to your life. By taking the information in through the input, 80% goes up to the brain, and then you get the output that goes back. The output are all the things that change. That's your heart rate, your hormones, your immune system, your gastrointestinal system, your blood pressure. All of that changes based on the information coming up. So, what we also know is that gravity pulls on you and pulls on me. And as the gravity pulls on us, it fires these things called receptors. The receptors are most abundantly found in the muscles and the joints. Now, you do have receptors in your eyes, in your ears, in your smell, your taste. But that's a minimal amount of overall brain activity. Minimal. The most abundant amount of the activity, the charging, the battery that comes up to the brain to keep it working properly, comes from the muscles and the joints. And if you look at where they're located inside of the body, they're most abundantly found in the middle of you and your spine. And there's a much larger amount in your upper neck. Your upper neck contains 10 times more receptors than the entire rest of your body combined. So when we go to the upper neck or you go to the spine, the reason why we're going there is not for this alignment thing. It's to activate the brain, to fire off those receptors, to get the brain to turn on, to run the show better. And if we do it repetitively over time, we can change that tone, change that music, and your level of function goes up. your perception of yourself goes up. Your perception of your environment around you goes up. And all the subsystems and all the cells work better. So, where things start basically is the receptors. And the receptors, again, are located in the muscles and the joints. The receptors, there's muscle receptors here and then muscle and joint receptors here. The next place that the information from the receptors goes is, if it's a muscle receptor, goes right to the cerebellum. And if it's a muscle and joint receptor, it goes past the cerebellum and over to this thing called the thalamus. The muscle receptors, when they go to the cerebellum, then they ultimately go to the thalamus. So ultimately, all sensory receptor information, that's eyes, ears, smell, taste, and these receptors in the muscles and the joints, ultimately hits this thing called the thalamus. It's your sensory hub. It allows your brain to know what is going on with your environment around you. And then the brain can do what? Make the changes, the motor output to respond to life. So the input, again, is sending all the information to the thalamus. The thalamus then sends the information over to the cortex and then back down to the body to make the changes. What you also want to know is that once the information goes from the thalamus, it does send information up to your cortex, the top part of the brain, back down to your muscles and joints, and immediately that starts to make a change there. But it also doesn't just go to your thalamus. The thalamus, because it's the sensory hub and all the information comes in, and then the body has to adapt to that, the thalamus then sends those signals, nerve signals now, over to your hypothalamus. So the signals from the thalamus to the hypothalamus is how the nervous system and the endocrine system and all your hormones are connected. The hypothalamus connects the nervous system, the endocrine system called your hormones, and the immune system. They all talk at the hypothalamus. So back to this again, the thalamus sends signals over to the hypothalamus. From the hypothalamus sends signals to your pituitary. Your pituitary is called the master gland. It's what controls the thyroid, your sex hormones in males and females, your adrenal stress hormones, your blood sugar regulation and your ability to have insulin resistance or diabetes, and then lastly, growth hormone, which is anti-aging and makes kids grow or not grow. And allows the body to, again, get strong after a while. So when you lay on the table and we fire the receptors in from the muscles and joints or the muscles, it goes up to the cerebellum, but ultimately over to the thalamus, back to the cortex and back down. How fast do these signals travel? Well, the receptors from the muscles and the joints have the largest nerve fibers, and they travel way faster than pain receptors, called nociceptors. So these large diameter nerves that carry the information from the receptors, I think they travel somewhere around the speed of an entire football field per second. So it's very fast. It's almost instantaneous. So I put you on a table and I click with the instrument. Here's the instrument again, and we click. What are we doing? We're firing receptors in the skin, the muscles, and the joints to go up to the cerebellum and ultimately to the thalamus, to make this whole system work better. Ultimately, you also influence the hypothalamus and change the hormones instantaneously. So over a time frame now, when we do that, we activate. And what does activate again mean? It means you kind of turn the brain on, and then the brain runs everything better. Here's how it runs the hormones better, but keep in mind, it runs everything better. It runs your gastrointestinal system, your cardiovascular system, your immune system, your reproductive system, your genitourinary system. Everything goes up in function. And if you're paying attention while you're on the table there, you can feel right away, wow, my shoulder just dropped. You might find yourself going, taking a big breath. That's your autonomic nervous system changing. You might find when I flex your legs again, hey, my legs feel like somebody just put oil in my knees. What is that? That's the muscles changing from the new input from the receptors from the firing that we just did with the gun. So over a time frame, if we do this repetitively, then what you can get is you can update the brain, get it to function at a higher level, and you're in a sense making some permanent change inside that brain. What you also want to know with receptor input is that if you're coming in with a significant neurodegenerative disease and some of those neurons are black, dead, you can't do anything there. So a red neuron is a healthy neuron, a black neuron is an unhealthy, dead neuron, and then there's a blue neuron that's not necessarily dead yet, but it's moving in that direction. And that blue neuron is called, it's in a state of what's called transneuronal degeneration. It's not permanent degeneration. So if all the neuron requires is the activation, it turns on and it works and you get better function. If the neuron also requires foods and nutrients, which we do here also, the neuron can go from blue to red and work optimally again. But if there's permanent neural degeneration, what you can do after a time frame, through repetitive activation, firing of these receptors, your brain will actually send new wires around, called dendrites, around the dead neurons and connect to the next red neuron. That's called cortical remapping. And if you do that repetitively over time, you can remap the brain and get it to a much higher level of function. So although there's some permanency there and that neuron cannot regenerate, if you wire around it, your function can improve by 80%. That may mean no more tremor in my hand. It may mean my back pain's gone. It may mean that my heart works properly. It may mean that my hormones work better. It may mean all of that. So this is why consistency and repetition with the care that you're getting here, that's why I may be seeing you 2, 3, 4 times a week or less over time. But the longer you do this treatment over time, the higher level you get with your nervous system. So every time you're on my table, it's an attempt to get you to your optimal human potential every single time. There's no such thing as maintenance. We're not trying to maintain anything. We're trying to say what frequency of treatment works best for you to keep you at an optimal level. Now, how do we know? Your checks and balances on the table clear quickly. My testing and retesting maintains high levels of function, or you keep getting better and better and better. What you also want to know is when you're lying on a table, I use 12 different indicators to let me know how the tone of that nervous system is. So I'm telling you what's going on with the nervous system. I'm not asking you, hey, how do you feel? I do want to know how you feel. And yes, I want you to feel better as soon as possible. But it is not going to influence what I'm going to do. And by the way, when do you feel bad? When you're almost dead. 85% damage, then you finally feel bad. So we're not going to be like the medical doc and only go, hey, how do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel? Because if I take some blood pressure pills and I lower my blood pressure, I may feel a little bit better, but it didn't do anything to correct the cause. So this is how the nervous system works. This is what we're doing with the combination of torque release technique and some of the other things that we do here. And this is the process of activation, raising the nervous system tone to a higher level. And again, this is how the power that made the body can heal the body. And as the nervous system goes up, your health goes up, and everything else just simply follows. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.